We are live. Hello, Brandon Milner.
Hello, Sue Britton. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Welcome to the Fintech Effect podcast.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here. And although we're in different parts of the country, it's feels like we've never been apart.
I know. I in our sort of prep call, I was thinking about that. There's people that you work with that when you don't talk to them for a while and you reconnect, it feels like yesterday. So
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's what's important, working with good people and people you trust. So
absolutely,
those relationships last forever.
True enough. So, so the Fintech Effect podcast is something I started to try and sort of shed light on what it's like to innovate inside big companies, big established companies, and you are no stranger to that. You've had quite a history of that role in a few different different types of markets. And so why don't we start with maybe a proper introduction and tell us a little bit about your background, your story.
Yeah, sure. So I actually originally started my career off in the financial services sector. So I was an institutional trader for Merrill Lynch.
I didn't know
that. There you go. So I did that for about 2 years after getting my degree. And then I sort of took a bit of time off, did a bit of traveling, and really figured that I don't want to live within that financial world, but I'm always intrigued and I love it, and it's part of a passion of mine. But I was fortunate enough to be dovetailed into the .com boom. And realize that there's an immense opportunity here to look at companies that are taking, I would say arguably legacy systems and platforms and trying to create this thing called a web page and a website. And VCs, and I'm definitely aging myself here.
I was gonna say,
VCs were like throwing copious amounts of investments and cash into these startups. And at that time, I left my home country of South Africa and I moved to the United Kingdom. And I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to see some of these startups pop up and realize that I wanted to be involved. So that sort of triggered me to realize that I needed to obviously strengthen my technical skills. So I learned how to code, I learned how to build websites, I learned how to do back-end development. And I did that for about 3-4 years while I was still working at a couple of the banks. I hope none of them are listening here because they'll probably do me because they're like, weren't you supposed to be doing your job? But I found, fast forward 10 years later, I found there was an interesting continued conversation that was being had amongst these companies where they wanted to innovate, they wanted to change, but they didn't know how. Or they thought they knew how, but they were really employing legacy tactics and old school thinking to bring things up to speed. And you were seeing these more nimble, smaller companies just popping up and IPOing and doing these crazy unicorn valuations. So leveraging sort of my business acumen as well as my technical skills, which I'd sort of built up over the last 3 or 4 years, I saw there was a very good opportunity and niche for me, particularly to sit in between the two. So when we talk to the business about we want to launch this platform and it's going to cost $5 million, money is never a problem, which for me, I never understood why they would just throw money at a solution without even looking through it. But then on the technical side, it became we can't do it this way because AS400 isn't configured or built to do that. Or we can't do this because Oracle doesn't have the module to do that, blah, blah, blah. So it's, fast forward 15, 20 years, we've got the same problems where it's like, we can't do it. We'd love to innovate. We're seeing all these unicorns pop up. We're seeing all these startups that have this great, like amazing technology, but that's for them. We're too big, but we want to use them. So it's a similar kind of dynamic, but it just obviously slightly different and much more mature compared to what it was before, but people are people. So
that's, I haven't heard it kind of put that way before, but that makes so much sense. Like, it actually is kind of the essence of what, the fintech effect I think is, which is, I want to be able to be more like this small, nimble company that offers a user experience that everybody wants, but there's a 15 bazillion reasons why I can't do that. And then you went on from there to actually be in charge of innovation inside of big companies, and that's what you do today. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, that is what I do today. And, I would say very obviously that every job you have, every experience you have is a stepping stone to your next step or your next opportunity. The important thing is to learn where you've stumbled, where you fell, so that your next step, you're still going to fall and stumble. Like, don't get me wrong, but you're not going to fall on your face. So the one thing, I landed now the job that I'm currently, I was going to say my final job, but the job that I'm currently
wishful thinking.
I think that was a slip of the tongue. Would really be focused around. So I work now for EllisDon, which is one of the largest general contractors in Canada. We've been around for, I would say, 70 to 72 years. So it is a family-run business, privately held. But we actually have 24 divisions within EllisDon. So we have a capital services group. We have a facilities management group, which basically takes care of our hospitals and our projects once they've been built. So we have a bunch of groups within, which I won't rattle them all off onto you, but one of them is our digital and data engineering group, which is the group that I belong to. So I run that group. I'm the SVP of digital and data engineering, which is de facto the CIO. So what does that mean besides a fancy title? Same problems, different company.
Yeah.
The difference here is that, through my experiences, and we've worked together in previous lives, so you saw the trials and tribulations, but the one common thread that I've learned amongst these big companies is that you need stakeholder engagement and you need executive buy-in. Those two are the secret sauce and recipes for any project initiative, whether it's innovation, whether it's like I want to sell a product. You've got to get that in, and they come hand in hand. So to get executive buy-in is arguably pretty easy. You put together a fancy PowerPoint, you say some fancy words, and everybody's like, oh my God, that's an amazing idea, we're going to make $10 million. Now go tell the other 4,200 people that they need to work with you.
Right. Yeah.
So the one thing I have learned through the battle scars is that stakeholder engagement piece is key to success. Now, on a large corporation, as well as I do, because you've actually helped me set that up, is steerco committees are places where innovation goes to die.
and a lot of PowerPoint.
And a lot of PowerPoint, which thanks to you and your team in previous worlds, I didn't have to ever do. So, because I'm terrible at it. It's my Achilles heel. So I would say, Sue, my career has really brought me to this place. But what I've also done, and we're having a pre-chat before this started about how long we've known each other, but we haven't spoken in a couple of years. It's working with people that you trust and that you've gone through the trenches with, and you've both led the same blood, and you've both experienced the same trials and tribulations and heartache and success together, because that only bonds you to build that understanding of how do we do this? Because there is no silver bullet. I can tell you that now before this thing starts. There's no silver bullet of this is how you run innovation in a corporate environment.
Yeah. It's art. It's art and science, right?
An art, yeah. There's a bit of science there, but most of it's art around dealing with people and managing them. So
So how long have you been in this role?
So I've been at EllisDon for almost 3 years, just going on 3 years now. Feels like a month, but it's been a very interesting ride. Tell us about some of the stuff that you've launched and that you've done since you've been there, because I don't know how many people know about EllisDon. I found that
same thing when you and I worked together at Cadillac Fairview. Like, you hear these big names, you know it's a big company, but maybe if you share a bit of your, what are some of these initiatives that you've launched through innovation, we come to understand a little bit more about what it is that you do.
Yeah, so I would say, I was very fortunate to inherit a very strong and solid team. They were just maybe slightly misaligned in terms of the goals and the structure to move forward. And they were trying to behave like a startup in a corporate environment on the tech side, which didn't work. So, my first role when I got there, my first task, I should say, when I got there, was to formulate some kind of structure and framework and processes that wouldn't hinder innovation and growth, but would really just get people aligned in terms of, this is what we need to do, this is a roadmap, this is how we get it done. Full stop.
Awesome. Yep.
Now, fast forward a year or so later, and that is total testament to the team that's under me. They're on, well-oiled machine doing what they need to do, which has now given us the fortitude to look outside of EllisDon and to the entire industry, I want to say, into the construction industry, which comprises of, and I'm going to miss some pieces, but really it's general contractors, subcontractors, and supply chain. Those are the three biggies that fit in. There's obviously millions of little things that come in, but those are the big pillars, I should say. And we, the decision was made, thankfully, to our former CEO, Jeff Smith, he was, it's a family-run business, so it was his and his family's business. And he started building, his mandate was 20 years ago that we should own our own domain. And what he meant by that was he created a strategy called Cradle to Grave, which ultimately means, Sue, that we as in EllisDon do everything from the cradle to the grave.
Okay.
So whatever we do, we're going to build it. And our focus, primarily around technology, we're going to build the technology, we're going to run it, we're going to manage it, we're going to own it.
Okay.
Our data, we're going to collect our own data. We're not going to be too reliant on third parties. Yes, that's a long haul strategy versus, partnering.
Yeah.
It's led us to this point where we have around about 15 to 20 years of expertise within the digital and engineering group that's allowed us to start looking externally and saying, how do we get the industry elevated as a whole? So we formed a division called Building Digital. And Building Digital, we created the website, we put all of our services on there, the typical stuff, and crickets, nothing. So,
yeah.
And a lot of us who have done these kind of initiatives know that it's not just about building. If you build it, they will come.
Right.
It's about being genuine and about being actually collaborative with the industry. So we set up, one of the exciting things that we just launched was a construction technology accelerator. So anybody who's familiar with incubators and accelerators, you would know what I'm talking about. But ultimately what it meant was we wanted to look outside of just Canada, but globally. So we partnered up with a company called Impulse Partners out of Paris. They helped us sort of set it up and get the framework going. We sent out a proposal. We were very fortunate to get about 108 applicants come in.
Oh, wow.
Which, just so you know, on a scale, normally there's about 20 to 35 that apply. We had 108. So we knew straight away there's appetite.
Right.
And it wasn't just because it's EllisDon, because people in Australia haven't really heard of EllisDon. So, so we culminated that into a demo day and, the usual stuff. We got some winners. Now we're partnering and working with those three companies to broaden their sort of exposure of their platforms and their technology within all of our sites. So we have about 280 active projects going on at any one time across Canada and Middle East. And now they have an opportunity to scale and grow with us. But on the flip side, we also have an opportunity to leverage these wonderful technologies. So Building Digital is really the anvil to drive these kind of initiatives. But it also allows us to keep the lights on within digital and data engineering. So all of our platforms, which we've built the equivalent of Procore, which is a construction ERP, we built one which we called Gate 3. Our team still runs it, manages it, runs all of our insights and analytics, runs all of our cybersecurity. And now we're looking to use building digital to sort of catapult that forward and say to the industry, we can help you do the same thing. You know, we can we could act as consultants, we could build it for people, things like that. So these are the kind of initiatives that are so outside of the technology world, but are very forward thinking in terms of helping the industry. Obviously, it's, you know, from our perspective, we get to hone our skills even more by helping others.
Yeah.
But that's sort of, those are the sort of the things that we're looking at and broaden out on them. Yeah.
You've probably heard me say this before, but oftentimes companies will do things like what you've described, like I think it's called, is it called TechCon? No, Contech.
No,
Contech.
Fintech, Contech, PropTech.
Right.
Just remember those three.
Right. But, you know, oftentimes it ends up being more innovation theater.
Yeah.
And you know, whether that's to sort of give the appearance that, you know, there's innovative things happening, and then these, you know, companies often come to these accelerators and you know, pitch contest competitions and are very happy to win but unhappy to never go anywhere, right? We've both been through that, and sometimes I think that is not theater. It's just there wasn't the right fit, or there wasn't the right opportunity,
or it wasn't the right time. Yeah.
Right. But what do you think you've done in this case to make sure that this is both worthwhile for you and for your customers, but also worthwhile for those startups or companies?
Yeah, so it goes back to really the beginning of this conversation around the stakeholder engagement. So before we launched this Contech Accelerator, you know, I met with several leaders of our operations team, our construction operations team, and I talked to them about it. We also had, and I sort of disseminated the message and got their buy-in. We're currently running we've been doing it now for about 1.5 years now, at what we call our pilot program. So we'll invite, or people will just reach out to us about, hey, we have this technology, we'd love to talk to you about what we could do for you. That goes through our pilot program. So our pilot program is really exactly what it says. Sure, we love your technology. We don't know if it's the real deal. We'll pilot it on 1 or 2 or 3 of our projects, see how it goes, and then you can scale. That in itself was a great mechanism in order to help our operations team let us build up the credibility towards the operations team, to be like, okay, Brandon and his team know kind of what they're doing. They're going to do what they're going to do, and they are helping us. So the very big difference between construction, prop tech, and fintech is that the construction industries are very unforgiving. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. If you don't do it, then you're kind of forgotten. So credibility is key. So I would say that's the success we've achieved through that, is once the Contech Accelerator happened, we got our winners. It wasn't then 3 winners. You know, the winners were provisioned, the link and site link. Give us a couple of months and we'll get back to you, because now I have to tell everybody about it. We'd already conceded that stuff with our team. So that once they'd won, we also invited the construction guys to come and vote and be part of the team. Yeah. And in that way, they felt engaged, but they also realized that this is real. It's tangible. Right. This is not us going up on stage and talking about how AI is going to change the construction industry and ML. Everybody has to have an ML model built into their platforms. Like, okay, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
It's meat and potatoes. So we have a problem, you have a solution. Let's put the two of you together and try to see if we can solve it. And I'm not saying all of these things worked out of the gate, but the pilot program was a great test bed to see what we could work, what wouldn't work. And so, you know, like I said, we're not perfect, we're learning, but building digital as part of EllisDon will help us build up that credibility so that people trust us enough to say, you guys kind of, you know, ate your own dog food. You're doing it yourself. Yeah. Kind of, you have 20 years experience. maybe we can have a conversation, as
Yeah.
opposed to, we're not sure if this is innovation theater or not.
Right. Oh, that's excellent. And what did you find? So you had a lot of startups respond to, the, I guess, the first, sort of outreach. But what's the industry like? Like you and I have talked about, I think somewhere up behind me is the Fintech wheel that,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, it's funny when I look back on it, because it's like so many logos. How could anybody ever get anything from it other than, wow, it's pretty big.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But what's it like in your space? Like,
I often draw analogies, especially like at conferences or if I'm doing webinars and things, that it is so uncannily like coincidental that the fintech and the proptech market was exactly where the contech market is now. So 5, 6, 7 years ago, everybody had that wheel, like, well, how do you choose? How do you know? There needs to be a consolidation in the market for sure within the construction tech space. I believe that Building Digital and EllisDon could be one of those people that can help do that. Because we have the process and the framework to take that wheel of 500, 600, 700 startups, pick the winners, and not pick the winners based on if they're going to unicorn or not. Pick the winners of, are they solving for legitimate solutions, or legitimate problems within our industry? Yes, some of them will, but where it's very different to the proptech and the fintech space, our industry, is that there is no one solution out there that fixes everything, because each project is different, each site is different, each initiative is different. So you build a condo, you think, oh, it's a cookie cutter methodology. It's not. Every project is different. So how do you find a technology that solves for that? You don't. But what you do is you find a string of beads or a string of technologies that you can piece together, and you create a bracelet. So I think our industry is also very scared to share as well.
Why is that? I mean, is that somewhat connected to the, it sounds like fear of failure, or you can't fail?
I think a little bit about that. I think, sorry, I stand corrected. I think a lot has to do with that. Our margins in the business are very small.
Okay.
The margin of error therefore is small, but the downside is a massive amount of dollars that could go wrong. So every project or every superintendent has their own little budget that they work with, and they have $1,000 to spend. If they go over, $1,000, they're getting balked at by the client and being like, well, why are you spending all this money? And you said it was a fixed price and blah, blah, blah. So we are so price conscious that it's hard to be innovative and hard to try and be experimental, knowing that it may fail. And then you're like, you know what? I'm going to just stick to my pen and my paper and my Excel, because it's worked for the last 40 years or 30 years. So that's a challenge. It's no doubt that is, I would say, the biggest challenge. And then the final part to answer your question, why don't we share? There's a lot of IP in how people do things and how they build.
Oh, interesting.
So it's kind of like, well, I don't want to show you, because then you're going to get a competitive advantage, and then suddenly now we're not going to win the next bid. It's a fallacy, in my opinion. You're either good at something or you're not good at it. Simple as that. So,
interesting. Okay, so so you've been there for 3 years, you've launched some things, you've got a great team, and hopefully this continues for years and years to come until you decide you don't want to work anymore. But so often innovation gets shut down. And often it gets shut down because there's just certain things, certain conditions. I still have my 10 conditions for success. I don't know if you probably don't remember them, but
I don't remember them off by heart, but I remember most of them.
And I still think they're mostly true. I mean, or at least, they certainly have been from experience. So future will dictate that. But, like there's, you need to have a specific financial, commitment to innovation, right? There's one. What are the things that make it work at EllisDon, do you think?
I would say not promising or over promising, both those words, revenue. Like that is the biggest pitfall that in my humble opinion, that any person that's trying to set up corporate innovation can do. We need $10 million and we're going to make you 400 million. Well, if it was that easy, trust me, Sue, I wouldn't be speaking to you right now, I'd be on my boat. So
Yeah.
But I think that's problem number one. Now, problem number two, I think it's what worked for us is we took a very calculated, measured approach. So we set up the pilot program, not even thinking that it was an innovation framework, that it was just, we're going to just try something small, low impact, low cost, and that as least disruptive as possible to the organization as a whole. That I think was one of the big, oh my gosh, okay, that's the first hurdle to take over. Try. Now, and when you actually taught me about innovation, was that innovation is meant to fail. You are meant to fail. And it sounds so clicky and cliched, but it is so true, because if you don't fail, I use the very childish analogy of walking up the steps. You'll never learn that, when there's a bigger step, you got to just be careful. If you see a crack, you got to move to the right.
No, it works. Totally
but it works. So I think from my perspective, that is where that was the one side of the scale, why it's working at EllisDon, a slow, measured approach to innovation, not overcommitting to dollar revenues, things like that. And on the second piece, we were actually just very fortunate that our former CEO and now our current CEO are both very engaged in the technology space. And very engaged, not in the innovation space, but in the technology, construction tech space, and know that there's a vast opportunity for us selfishly as EllisDon and Building Digital to be able to leverage our expertise in a different diversified sort of way, not in true construction. So not many GCs have 24 divisions within them. We have our own capital services group and our, that do bonding and financing ourselves. That doesn't really happen often. So I would say the other end of the scale, why it's so far been a success, and hopefully touch wood, it'll keep going, is that the leadership wants innovation. So EllisDon's culture is very, very entrepreneurial, very family-run business, entrepreneurial. They give you chances to do things. Don't mess it up, because you will get punished or ridiculed, I should say, not fired, but ridiculed and just put back in your box. And but it is very much well, let's try something. If it doesn't work, we can always go back to pen, paper, and Excel, because we know how to do it that way. So I think the industry in general is like that. EllisDon has just taken it's not only us, there are a few, especially down in the States, that have taken the first leap of faith forward. And
I think that it rings true to me. I remember being that early in my career, that individual contributor who wanted to do something differently. And the problem, if that's not supported at the top, is it just creates all sorts of disruption internally. And so I think that having the leadership have the vision, but then also too, I'm sure, and I don't know if this is the case, but I'm sure along the way people have said, well, why are we doing this? Maybe we shouldn't spend money on this or that, as it relates to, and leaders have to remain committed, right? And say, well, you know what, because the thing is, I've only done one startup where I've built a product, and then the other startups are services. So there's not, there's no comparison. But when you're building a product, it takes time to generate the revenue and to find the right fit in the market and to make money and to have the trust of customers. So it should take time to create, new things inside of EllisDon. You can't, right? So time is just one of those things that, you have to be patient, which means you have to have commitment to knowing that you
articulated that so brilliantly because, we're part of a group called Built Worlds. Built Worlds is really a construction marketing event conference that happens
Right.
times a year. And as part of that, we're part of the Venture Forum section.
Cool.
So the Venture Forum is exactly what you think it is. It's venture capitalists within the construction industry. And one of the companies stood up and they gave a little sort of spiel about how they've been successful and why they've been successful comparatively to other VCs. And they said something very insightful. They're like, and me and you know this because we're both pretty well experienced within the VC world. You're looking for an ROI within 18 months, some kind of ROI, 18 months to 2 years max. In the construction VC world, their secret sauce is exactly what you just said, patience. Now revenue is going to be generated, or I should say that's not true. Companies won't be cash flow positive for at least 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
It's simple as that. And that's not because it's a crappy product. It's because the engagement and the absorption into the industry is so slow. So it's a patience game. You're right. And if the VCs are starting to figure it out, I think corporations need to start figuring it out as well, that it's not, we built this product and I know which product you're talking about and it was successful, but like, that's one of the rare things, right? Where you build a product, works and everybody gets money and everybody's happy, but it's a patience game for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I like when you fire your innovation team or you take all the funding away or whatever, it typically doesn't have to do with the work people are doing, right?
No.
It has to do with you actually are not really looking for innovation. You're looking for, revenue growth, or you're looking for whatever. And just maybe to take you back to your old financial technology world, I look at, like the unfortunate part about being a public company is you can't all of a sudden say, well, we're going to take this $1 billion and we're going to put it towards something else, like, I don't know, digital banking. And we're going to miss our targets and you shareholders are going to, not get a dividend now.
Yeah.
Like the world ends, right? You just can't do it. But it's I think it's a real dilemma because I look at in Canada anyway, the industries, the public companies, it's one of those, we have an oligopoly economy in Canada. In terms of public companies, and every industry is really dominated by very large companies, of which there's maybe 3, 4, or 5 of, and they can't afford to innovate.
No, because they can't afford to risk that market share or their shareholders, or for sure.
It's I had someone tell me this a long time ago. It's like if you're working at a company that issues a dividend, then it means that they can't invest in innovation. And I was like, and I was kind of younger and kind of green or whatever. And I'm like, what does that mean? But now you think about it, like it's all about the almighty, return to the shareholders.
Yeah.
It's a tough, there's ways to solve for that, but it's that's probably another thing that, you're fortunate to have in the case of EllisDon is it's private.
It's private and funnily enough, we actually, the Smith family who run they own EllisDon, or started and run EllisDon. We've actually started an employee share program where the employees are now, I don't know what the date is, but the goal is to have 100% employee owned shares. So we do issue dividends to our shareholders, ironically. But I agree with you. It's very different to a public domain, public offering. It would be cheeky to try compare the two. But even so, it's that mantra, Sue. Even within a privately held company that is going to become 100%, there's still that question, and that has been raised. We're spending some money on this technology stuff, in quotes. What about shareholder value? Like, does that mean I'm not getting a dividend this year?
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
it's a vastly different reaction to, you know, 4,500 people versus a publicly traded company that is tens of thousands. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's an
do see a
industry.
day that we have to be
Yeah,
fiscally responsible for sure.
for sure. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's tough. It's very tough.
I
You're right.
don't know enough about this, but I was noticing that Netflix, somebody was writing about Netflix recently, and you know how they lost a whole bunch of subscribers and everybody was all worried about them, and now they're like, you know, whatever the chart was, it was about you know, monthly active users, and it's just gone like this.
Mm.
And sure, so you can maybe have a dip because you have to change your business model, or you have to, you know, stop letting 18 family members use your one Netflix subscription for $7. But geez, but yeah, it's anyway, interesting. I'm sure we could talk about lots and lots and lots of stuff. But
Sure.
so you know, what advice would you give, you know, to, let's say, someone like you inside of a company who maybe has some of the same conditions for success,
Mm.
but, you know, hasn't got a lot of experience yet, trying to actually, you know, affect change? What would you do?
I mean, besides wishing them good luck,
That's not, don't do that, because that's they're gonna be like, oh.
honestly, it's you know, I would say my biggest piece of advice is to not rush things and to be patient. You know, whether it's in the construction space or outside of the construction space or the retail space, everything takes a day plus a month. It really does. And cash flow, I know, for starting a business, you know, if you're talking about people that are innovators that are starting a business, cash flow is king. I get it. I know that.
Yeah.
There's never a world where you could just, very rarely, just not need the money, but you know.
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah.
I would say my advice is really around having a little bit of a tough skin. So not taking things personally. Now, over my career, I've built a lot of products, never for myself, always for companies.
Yeah.
And a vast majority of them have failed.
Yeah.
Or launched into, when I say failed, launched into market and then sort of fizzled out.
Sure. Yeah.
Take everything with a quasi kumbaya attitude of, we're going to learn from this. Because if you take it personally, you'll get dejected and demoralized so quickly.
Yeah.
You will end up just working at a retail store, you know, for an hourly rate and just be like, I had this great idea, but I'm just going to
Yeah.
secure, which is good for some people, but for people that want to create innovation, you know, working behind a counter is just, they're never going to get there or feel achieved. I'd say the other thing for me is really, you know, besides the patience and then not taking things personally, is once you start engaging with clients or with partners even, but at your core, you have to be open to changing. And the Netflix thing actually reminded me of things of, if they never change their business model, everybody whined and complained like, whoa, what do you mean? Like, now my cousin in Argentina can't use the same account as me, but like, why not? What do you care? Well, we care because it's a business. So they needed to change their model. They didn't change their product, but they changed their model.
Yeah.
You know as well as I do that the product that you launch with is very rarely the product that goes to market.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I say launched, I mean like you start with. So I would say be open to that as well.
Yeah.
Be flexible and be really resonant to accepting help. Sometimes, and I've the implementation for building digital, our sort of mission is like build by a partner or strategic partner. So we could build it ourselves because we have a team of 200. We could, you know, buy some software, which doesn't really help us. Or we could strategically partner. Like, so be open to those kind of that flexibility. You've got to be flexible, and you have to know that you need stakeholder engagement and senior stakeholder engagement. And
so I was going to say, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to tell you that I think one of the things that you do, probably unconsciously or innately or whatever the way you want to describe it, is you actually have a beautiful way of, managing relationships internally to like, and authentically, like, not like, oh, I'm just, oh my gosh, I remember somebody who used to say, oh, you gotta socialize. And that became like a dirty word for me, because it's like, socialize. Oh my God. But it is like actually caring about what your colleagues think, and getting their buy-in, and recognizing that, without them, you're likely not going to succeed. So you do that very, very well. And I think that's really important too.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that, Sue. And I think, it's also having a team around you that can help you do that. And when you are, in very big quotes, socializing things, or getting people's buy-in is more important. It's important that you're authentic, in the sense of, you admit your failures. Like, we want to do this. It's not perfect. We're figuring it out, but we kind of need your help to help us figure it out. We'll do all the heavy lifting, but there's a massive upside. Shareholder, increased revenue, increased dividends, increased blah, 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 blah. So I think that's actually a good point that I didn't really think of, is maybe it is because it's the way I like to work, is just be authentic and honest about things. Don't sugarcoat, and don't put wool over people's eyes, because it's just not fair, to be honest with you.
There are no superheroes in innovation.
No.
None.
Maybe you're a superhero.
No, definitely not. No.
You just need a cape, and then you're good.
It was great to talk to you. I really feel like that people will get a lot from this conversation, and I did, and of course I always do. But it's great to hear you so passionate, and also so humble about what you're doing, because it's no small feat to do the job you're doing, and I also appreciate the time, because I know you're a busy guy.
Well, today's my daughter's birthday, so I'm actually have a lot of time.
That's right. Good. See, you're prioritizing. It's the middle of the day, and you're prioritizing.
Yeah, she's out shopping, so it's fine.
Spending lots of money.
Exactly.
Anyway, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. And always good to chat with you, and anytime.
I'm sure people know where to find you. They can find you on LinkedIn or wherever.
I'm on LinkedIn.
All right. Awesome. Okay.
Thanks,
Ciao.
Sue. Ciao.
Okay. Bye.